What's up, everyone? Aaron Neger here, Cheesehead TV, coming to you late on Wednesday evening. Sorry for the late arrival. Very busy day at LiveX and just finishing up, actually. But never want to leave you guys hanging. Always here, always ready to talk some Packers. And obviously a pretty slow news day when it comes to the green and gold, although the internet was afire with people giving their top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 safeties, top 5 corners, blah, blah, blah. I mean, man, we're just at the start of this being shut in stuff, and people are already going to rankings and losing their mind. Crazy. Hello to everybody in the comment section. Good to see you all. Hey, what do you think about signing the new wide receiver? Well, they signed one yesterday in Devin Funchess. And as I said yesterday, they'll let him in, let him compete. He may not even make the squad. I suspect he will, but you never know. We'll see what happens in the draft and then what happens when they start competing in training camp. Sanjay, what's up, man? Who in their right mind has Elway over Marino or Favre? Stephen A. Smith, that's who. And that's fine. I mean, whatever, man. People get so hung up on this, and everybody has their own opinions. I had some guy coming after me today because I dared to compliment Devontae Adams for mentioning Marvin Harrison as one of his top 5 wide receivers. And that's a key phrase there, his top 5 wide receivers. Everybody can have their own opinion, man. Everybody gets so upset and they instantly get like really personal and awful on Twitter. Like, and I understand that's Twitter and that's the internet, and I get it. But man, at this time where, the powers that be, Mother Nature is laying waste to people and kind of peeling back the onion skin and revealing that, hey, guess what? All these borders, all these things that separate us as human beings don't mean anything. We're all just people. So, if someone has a top 5 wide receiver list, that's fine. If someone thinks Marino and Favre are not as good as Elway, fine. I mean, really, these are the things we get upset about. And I know it's late and I'm cranky and whatever. Mike, thanks for the super chat. What does the Kyle Allen trade say for Rosen's value? That's a really good question. I wouldn't think any personnel person trying to put together a deal for Rosen would, on either side, would be referencing that trade. But I just think the extenuating circumstances when it comes to Rosen make it a little more difficult. Obviously, you're dealing with the contract that has a 5th-year option. Look, I think a lot of it comes down to where people had him coming out of school, because he hasn't played a whole lot of football. He has played, obviously, in the regular season for 2 franchises, but, I think a lot of it still comes down to where they had him or how they had him evaluated coming out of the draft 2 years ago. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to drive it. I don't think compensation as far as Allen goes is going to mean much of anything if indeed they end up trading him. And I know they probably will, but they've said they want to hang on to him. Maybe they do. We'll see. Maybe for some reason they don't get Tua in the draft, although I think they will. We'll see. Jake, thanks for the super chat. Is Funchess just Lazard with bad hands? No, definitely not. Much more physical wide receiver. And I know he gets a bad rap, deservedly so, some of it, as far as the drops go, but he is still a very physical presence. He can definitely do some damage in this offense. There's no question about it, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football. The drops are a thing. You can't sugarcoat it. But he's a different type of wide receiver than Lazard. Lazard, I think, is actually maybe a bit more refined from what we saw at the end of last year, at least in this offense with Aaron Rodgers. But I suspect over the course of a year, if he does make the team, Funchess could get there as far as reading defenses, reading them like 12 does, and picking up the checks and things at the line of scrimmage, etc. But yeah, he's a brute of a prospect, and they're going to love clearing out and sending him on those shallow crosses, and then letting him work with the ball in his hand. The comeback stuff, he can just kind of box guys out. I think he's a different type of receiver than Lazard. Trent, thanks for the super chat. Who is your choice of tight end on the Packers all-decade team 2010 to 2019? Whew. Does Toolbox make that list? Does he fall in that? No, he doesn't. He's before that, isn't he? That's too bad. I don't know. I'll have to come back to that one. That's a really good question, though. Jason, thanks for the super chat, and thanks for the kind note. Thanks for everything you're doing. Thank you for tuning in and making Cheesehead TV part of your Packers routine. I mean, goodness knows, right now there's not a whole lot of news, albeit, the odd Funchess signing. We're all just waiting for the draft to get here, and then it's going to be a long, cold time before we know anything about an off season or a season starting, because I'll be shocked if the season starts on time. Austin, thanks for the super chat. If you could pick any current college QB to be Rodgers' successor, who are you taking? Tua, probably. Given that he's coming off of the injury, you don't really know what's going on there. I love him as a prospect. I know there's some questions about that hip and how long-term that might be. But yeah, I'd love to have him behind Rodgers, but I don't think that's going to happen. Zachary, thanks for the super chat. Thanks very much. Why haven't we signed Jared Valdir? Funchess could reemerge as a good wide receiver, as he has shown he can compete with Rodgers under center. Funchess could be a number 2. Get a beer on me, Nags. Also, Kenneth Murray at 30, will he drop? A lot there, buddy. Will he drop? God, I hope so, but I don't think so. I don't expect it to happen, but I will be the most elated human being if it does. No question about it. And if he gets taken there at 30 by the Packers. Why haven't they signed Jared Valdir? Most likely they knew they could get Wagner for a lot less. I suspect also the Packers not wanting to throw in on a multi-year deal on a guy who was retired and then unretired. I do think he was a great locker room fit. He obviously did great work when Brian Bulaga went down last year. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's most likely financially driven, because you looked at the report coming out during the combine saying that he had talked to a number of different teams. I had at the time suspected that was just smoke from the agent trying to drive up his price with Green Bay. I mean, either that is the case and there are other teams. I mean, either that is the case and they kind of overplayed their hand, or there are other teams and they knew they could get a better deal out there and they're just waiting for one. I'm not quite sure. I really thought it made a world of sense to bring him back and then use him as their bridge tackle to whoever they end up drafting this year, which I don't doubt will happen. But, they like Wagner and they like him at that price point for 2 years, and away we go. Jitsu, thanks so much for the super chat. Watched an old Transplants yesterday. Wow, people really are starved for entertainment. Remember that McCarthy turned down the Cards job. Which job would you rather have of the two? You mean between the Cowboys and the Cardinals? Well, now, to be fair, to be clear, he turned down the opportunity to interview. That was the report. He wasn't offered the job, although it was intimated that he could have total control. But I would suspect, I know a lot of people talk about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones and what a distraction it is and blah, blah, blah. But of those two, I'd much rather work for Jerry Jones. And Mike probably would too. With the Cardinals, he would have been the face of the franchise. He would have had to answer every question. He would have been, the buck stops here guy. Whereas in Dallas, that's all Jerry. Jerry literally has his own radio appearance every week. Jerry has press conferences after every game. All that pressure that was on him in Green Bay is off of him in Dallas. All he has to do is coach. Now, that's still a lot of pressure, obviously. But of the two spots, especially where that roster was at the time, I think Mike landed in a really good spot for him. We need a slot wide receiver. I mean, yes, but they're not going to go get a slot type guy, except maybe in the draft. We'll see. The closest thing they've had to that is, as far as bringing one in via the draft, has been Randall Cobb a couple years ago. And even he wasn't what you would consider the prototypical slot guy, just as far as speed goes. But do they need one? I mean, they showed they can operate pretty darn well without one last year. They won a whole lot of ball games. They went through a month period without their best number one wide receiver, and they put up 40 points a week, 30 points a week. Yes. Would you like to have one? 100%. I think if one falls to them perfectly in the draft, value-wise, yeah, they'll probably take one. But, the other problem is that they just have certainly shown time and again they like a certain body type at wide receiver, regardless of position, as far as flanker, X, whatever. And the prototypical traditional slot guy is just something they have not really leaned into over the years. And I don't expect Gutekunst to change much unless, of course, there's a prospect that he absolutely loves. Then perhaps he takes him. Don't you think Funchess and Lazard have similar traits and skill sets? Or was it more important to get another veteran for the wide receiver room? A bit of both. I think, yeah, as I said before, Funchess is a much more muscular receiver than Lazard is. I know Lazard's a big guy. I know he's a converted tight end. But Funchess is a different animal. He is, for lack of a better word, he is a physical beast. Like I said, they like big guys. They like wide receivers that can work over the middle, that can do the dirty work, so to speak, that when the weather turns, they're not their speed doesn't disappear because maybe they weren't the fastest to begin with, but they're going to be able to muscle through a press coverage, etc. It's always that's been the way since Ron Wolf came to Green Bay in the early 90s. But all of that said, I do think that your second point is on point. I do think they wanted a veteran, somebody who's been through the war, so to speak, guy who knows how to be a pro. They were awfully young and inexperienced at that spot last year. I don't doubt they wanted to bring at least a little NFL experience into the room. No question. I think I missed a super chat. Did I? Oh, yeah, I missed Frank. Thanks very much. I looked at the analytics and noticed the measurables of Funchess are very similar to that of Eric Ebron. Is this the type of receiver we're getting? No. Like Eric Ebron? He doesn't have the body control that Ebron does as far as, adjusting in the air, kind of catches, etc. At least not to my eyes. But, athletically, I guess they could be similar. I mean, like I keep saying, he's a big guy. And I know I got a lot of jokes when he got signed, can they convert him to tight end, etc. But yeah, no, I wouldn't compare him to Ebron. Cody, thanks for the super chat. Would Denzel Mims be one of the proto slot guys? I don't know about prototypical, but he could certainly play in the slot. I think he can play all three spots. And I don't think they'd hesitate for a second putting him there. Tay, thanks so much for the super chat. Does Goody need to hit home runs in this draft? I don't love his drafts as much as others. Maybe I'm wrong here. Tay, it's not wrong or right. It's your opinion, man. That's fine. Does he need to hit home runs? I don't think he needs to knock every pick out of the park, but he certainly needs to improve his batting average. There's no question about that. 2018 is shaping up to be a pretty piss-poor draft. Early returns on 2019, I think, are positive, but it could get dicey quick if guys don't develop. So, yeah, I would think he just needs to improve his ability to find consistent contributors and hopefully starters. Because right now, like I said, 2018 is looking pretty piss poor. And 2019, the jury's out. Could go either way. Sam, thanks so much for the super chat. Does Mims' play remind you of Donald Driver? A little bit, although I think he's a lot more explosive. But yeah, I could see that. I could see it like a shifty, especially after the catch, work over the middle kind of guy. Yeah, I could see that. Nathan, thanks for the super chat. Isolate, I'm always on time. Well, I'm isolated. I'll tell you that. At number 30, we must take, I love it when people say must about the draft because no. We must take Mims, Rager, Chenault, Jefferson, or Claypool. I mean, any one of those guys could be the pick. They could pick a defensive tackle. They could pick an inside linebacker. The draft is deep at wide receiver. There are 7 rounds every year, and no year prior to this one will offer them more opportunity to improve at wide receiver throughout the draft than this wide receiver class. If they don't take a wide receiver at 30, that doesn't mean they won't find an immediate contributor. That's all I'm going to say about that. Craig, thanks for the super chat. With a new 17-game season starting in 2021, do you see Green Bay finally playing a London game? I mean, yeah, I think that will be in the cards sooner rather than later. I think that 17th game will help them get there because of the fact that it will most likely be a neutral site game. I'm hoping, man. I want them over there. I know Rodgers wants them over there. I know a lot of fans want them over there. So here's hoping it happens in 2021. David, thanks for the super chat. Is it likely the off-season programs will be limited, if non-existent this year? Will this make the impact of any rookies or even free agents much less? David, that's something that a lot of people in personnel have been talking about over the course of the last week to 10 days. Yes, it is going to make a difference. It's going to be akin to, and this is a comparison that I didn't think of, but Mike Tanier at Bleacher Report used to work for Football Outsiders. Great guy, known him forever. He made this point. I think, much like Mike does, that it'll resemble a lot of what we saw back in 2011, coming off of the lockout, when the CBA, didn't get done until last minute, and they missed a lot of offseason time. And Rodgers was criticized for not having the quote unquote offseason workouts, and then of course he came out opening night and lit up the Saints. I don't know how much, if any, offseason we're going to see, but I do think it will definitely, stunt learning curves for rookies, and it will certainly impact free agents somewhat, I think, especially at the quarterback spot, which is really interesting in a year that has seen more starting quarterback movement than I can remember in a very long time. I mean, think about the new faces in different places. Obviously, Tom Brady and that storyline has gotten all the press, but I mean, there are a lot of longtime positions, starters who are changing teams, franchises, systems, offensive coordinators, etc. I do think, the teams that have a little bit of continuity, especially on offense, are going to be a little bit better off early in the season. Now, do I think it's, season changing? No. But I do think it will show up early in the season, and the teams that have the continuity, that have had staffs in place for a while, that have a bit of continuity on their roster, I think they will have a little bit of an advantage. Again, not a huge one, but it will certainly be noticeable. I don't think there's any question. Guys, appreciate all you do. Thanks, man. Have you any inside scoop as to why they choose Kirksey over Kwiatkowski, the Bears linebacker? Oh, I don't know about inside scoop. I did talk to Nick's agent. He said the Packers just jumped on Kirksey right away. Didn't really reach out about Nick after that. So, yeah, I don't know inside scoop. I think they knew they could get Kirksey for a bit less. I mean, you look at what the Raiders paid. The Packers were never going to go there. They have to be judicious with their cap prior to signing Kenny Clark to a monster extension, which will undoubtedly happen this summer. So, I mean, there's no real inside scoop other than that they were, trying to make sure they could sign both an inside backer and a right tackle. If Murray drops to 30 and Goody passes or trades down, what will you scream out the window? I won't scream anything. It'll just be like when they didn't take Miles Jack all those years ago. I'll just be profoundly disappointed. Although it gave us Kenny Clark, so Ted made the right call there. I'll acquiesce to Goody, whatever he does. If the season is delayed, will training camp and preseason be canceled so they can dive right into week one? Will they have a mini training camp no matter what? That's a really good question. It's something that, again, a lot of people are asking and talking about. I suspect they'll have like a very super truncated camp / preseason, maybe like a week, 10 days. But I can't imagine they wait very long, because the longer they push back the start of the season, the more gummed up the television contracts get as far as, their agreements, what they've promised to deliver, etc. Maybe they delay it a little bit if they want to play all 16 games, though. And that's the other thing. Don't forget the schedule traditionally comes out in a little under a month. It's hard for them to really kind of put that all together, not really knowing. I keep coming back to it. I said it like 3 weeks ago on Twitter, and I got kind of poo-pooed, but I'll be absolutely shocked if the season starts on time. I do think they'll have a full season. I just don't know what the logistics of it will look like. But I think they don't ever pay attention to GMs and coaches. They're going to make their money, and they're going to do it however they can as far as making sure they deliver to their media partners. But I do think they'll acquiesce a little bit to the football side of things and have some semblance of a camp. Now, again, what the extent is, I have no idea. If Lane Taylor hasn't been let go by now, is it safe to say he'll be around at least for OTAs? Not necessarily. I mean, I do think, for the time being, they've decided, it's not worth cutting him. They like having that presence there. Maybe let him come and maybe even he and Billy Turner compete for the right guard spot. But yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that he's quote unquote safe yet. Gutekunst has done this kind of thing before in the past where, he's had guys that could be moved and or cut, and he hasn't done it. And we've been like, oh, I guess they're okay. And then a move has to be made or an opportunity comes up, that would take some cap maneuverability, and then he makes the cut. I can't think of the examples off the top of my head, but I do remember specifically thinking it's interesting that he's waited until, okay, now I want to make this move, so I'm going to cut this guy. He's done that before. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Lane has made it, or that he'll walk into the offseason program / OTAs, whatever they may be. But I do, I did say the other day, people keep saying, why is Lane Taylor on the squad? Because he's better than Billy Turner. I mean, I know they paid Billy. I get that. But, part of the gig is keeping your options open and making sure you have the best 53 or in the offseason 90 guys available. Lane Taylor's a good football player. I know he struggled that 2 years ago when he had his ankle injury. He certainly struggled down in Chicago in week 1 last year. Everybody did. David Bakhtiari did. 3-time All-Pro David Bakhtiari. But Lane Taylor is a good football player, and people are so quick to want to cut him. I understand why he's still around. That's all I'm saying. Alex, thanks. 270 people watching and only 34 likes. Come on, people, show some love. That's what I'm talking about. Hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. Cheesehead TV. We're devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Speaking of which, I got to go. I have another Patreon Madden game. I took on 2 people last night, beat them both. That first game was gangbuster, man. It was one of the best games I've had. If you'd like to take me on in Madden, I'm undefeated, by the way. Haven't been beat yet. But if you'd like to take me on, please consider giving us $5 a month on Patreon, patreon.com/CheeseheadTV. I play patrons. I had been playing them every week, but now that coronavirus has shut us all in, I'm playing a hell of a lot more Madden. So, join up Patreon. Take me on. Issue the challenge. I look forward to it. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. Go Pack, go.